My drunk husband at the company holiday party decided to auction me off before I'd even arrived. Who wants to spend a night with my frump and listen to her squawk? Starting bid $5. But when I walked into the ballroom, the real show began. 8 years ago, I was a completely different person. I was 22. I was a voice major at the Eastwood Conservatory of Music. The whole world felt like a stage, and I was sure I was destined to shine on it. My professors told me I had a rare timbre, rich, warm, with astonishing depth. I sang in the conservatory's theater, competed in vocal competitions, and dreamed of the grand stage. In the evenings, I'd stand before the mirror, imagining myself taking a bow to the thundering applause of a packed house. I met Greg at a concert our conservatory held for its sponsors. He was a junior manager at a firm that had given us a small grant. After my performance, he came up to introduce himself, saying he'd never heard anything more beautiful. I blossomed under the compliment. He was 3 years older, confident, ambitious, always talking about his career plans and the successful business he would one day build. I was flattered by the attention of an older man with such serious goals. We dated for 6 months. Greg took me to concerts, bought me recordings of famous sopranos, and told me I was more talented than all of them. He promised that when he made enough money, he would pay for me to attend a summer fellowship in Italy, where the real vocal masters trained. I believed every word. My plan was to graduate, get into a top-tier graduate program, and start my career. Everything seemed so clear, so right. And then I got pregnant. It wasn't planned. It just happened. I remember sitting on the edge of the bathtub holding the test with its 2 pink lines, not knowing whether to cry or celebrate. On one hand, a baby. On the other, my final year of conservatory. My graduation recital was just 3 months away. All my plans for grad school. Greg was thrilled. He said it was time to start a family that we would manage. His mother, Sharon, however, had a different reaction. I remember our first serious conversation, the 3 of us in her kitchen. She poured coffee, pushed a plate of store-bought cookies toward me, and asked point-blank what my plans were. "Sharon, I want to finish my degree," I answered. "I still have 5 months before the baby is due. I can take all my finals, and after the baby is born, I'll take a year off and go back." Sharon looked at me as if I'd suggested flying to the moon. "A sabbatical. With a newborn Anna, honey, what are you thinking? A normal woman in your position should be with her child, not running off to some recitals." "Mom's right," Greg chimed in. "Look, we're starting a family. That's more important than all your performances. Your career can wait, but I'm so close to my diploma." "A diploma from a music conservatory," Sharon actually laughed. "And what will you do with it? Sing at weddings. You're better off focusing on your family." My Greg is building a career. He needs a reliable wife, a homemaker, the mother of his children, not some girl dreaming of a stage. I remember sitting at their table, sipping my cooling coffee and feeling everything inside me clench. But Greg looked at me with such hope, telling me he loved me, that we'd make it together, that I could always go back to singing when the child was a little older. He promised to support my dream. Just later. When things settled down, I took a leave of absence in my 3rd trimester. I gave birth to Leo late that spring. He was so small, so helpless, crying through the night, demanding constant attention. I was sleep-deprived, barely finding time to brush my hair. Conversations about returning to the conservatory grew shorter and more reluctant. "Anna, honey, look at yourself," Sharon would say when she came to visit. "You have dark circles under your eyes. Your hair's a mess. What school? You need to learn how to handle a baby first." And Greg started coming home from work tired and irritable. "Can't you at least keep the house in order? I'm working my tail off all day, and I come home to this mess. And the baby is screaming from morning till night." "He's just a baby," I'd say, trying to defend myself. "This is normal. Maybe you just don't know how to handle him." My mom says I was a quiet baby at his age. Gradually, everything good between us began to fade. The compliments stopped, replaced by criticism. I'd gained the normal 20 pounds that almost every new mother does, but Greg would look at me with disapproval. "You should really get back in shape. You've let yourself go." "I have a newborn I'm nursing. It's temporary." "Temporary? It's been 6 months. Other women are back in their jeans in a month." Money became a constant source of arguments. Greg's salary barely covered the rent on our small 1-bedroom apartment in a dreary suburb, groceries, and baby supplies. I suggested I get a job even part-time, but he flatly refused. "Where would you go with an infant? No, you stay home. In a couple of years, when Leo's older, we'll see. But we're barely making ends meet. That's because you don't know how to budget. My mom raised 3 kids on this kind of money." I tried to save buying the cheapest groceries, wearing my old clothes until they had holes, never buying anything new for myself. Everything went to Leo and food, but Greg's reproaches continued. One day I tried to sing. Leo was about a year old, asleep after his lunch. I quietly hummed an aria from La Traviata, one I had once performed for an exam. My voice felt unfamiliar after such a long silence, my vocal cords weak, but the melody flowed on its own, and for a few minutes I felt like myself again. Greg came home from work early and caught me. "What's all that yelling?" he asked sharply. "You'll wake the baby." "I'm not yelling. I'm singing quietly." Quietly, I could hear your wailing from the hallway. The neighbors probably heard it too. "It's embarrassing, Anna. I used to study this." "Used to. How long are you going to go on about that? You never even finished. And anyway, you never really had a voice. Your professors were just being nice to you." It was like a slap in the face. I stood in the middle of the room, unable to say a word. He went on. "Stop clinging to these childish dreams. You're a mother and a wife. Start doing your duties properly instead of pretending you're some kind of artist." From that day on, I didn't sing. I was afraid to. Every time I wanted to hum a tune, I'd imagine Greg calling it wailing and the sound would get stuck in my throat. Sharon started visiting more often, inspecting my housekeeping. She'd look inside my cabinets, run a finger along the shelves searching for dust, and criticize my cooking. "The soup is a bit thin, you should have added more potatoes." My Greg always used to eat up everything I made. "I cook the way I know how." "Exactly. You don't know how. It's a good thing I can come over and teach you, otherwise my son would starve." She compared me to the wives of Greg's colleagues. They were well-groomed, slim, successful, they worked, raised children, and still looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. And I was just a frumpy housewife in an old robe with unwashed hair. "You know Jessica, the wife of Greg's boss? My mother-in-law would say she has 2 kids, works as a lawyer, and always looks like $1,000,000. And you, 1 child, and you can't even cope." I tried. I really did. I'd get up at 6 a.m. to get everything done. I cleaned, cooked, did laundry, ironed. But the exhaustion built up and I became grayer and more invisible. The mirror showed me a stranger with dead eyes. When Leo turned 4, Greg announced he'd found a job for me. A janitor position just opened up in our office building. "You'll work in the mornings, be done by lunch, and you'll have time to pick Leo up from preschool. The pay isn't great, but at least you'll have some money of your own." "A janitor?" I asked. "What's wrong with that? It's a decent job. Physical labor is good for you. And the company will give me a discount on our office cleaning fees. It's a win-win for me." I didn't argue. We really needed the money. Leo was growing, needing more clothes, toys, and activities. So I started working as a janitor in the office building where my husband worked. It was a special kind of humiliation. Greg's colleagues would greet me with a reserved politeness, the way you greet service staff. He himself pretended he barely knew me. "Oh yeah, that's our Anna. Does a great job on the floors," he'd toss out casually if someone asked. I mopped the floors of the conference rooms where he held meetings. I dusted the desks where his colleagues sat. I heard them discussing their weekends, their vacations, the restaurants they'd been to. And then I'd go home, pick Leo up from preschool, cook dinner, put my son to bed, and collapse from exhaustion. The mirror was no longer my friend. I'd look at my reflection and not recognize myself. I was 30, but looked 40. Dark circles under my eyes, a stoop from constant fatigue, cheap clothes from discount stores I bought on clearance. I hadn't had a real haircut in years. There was no money or time for a salon. I just pulled my hair back into a bun. One evening, after Leo was asleep, I was sitting in the kitchen flipping through an old photo album. There I was on the conservatory stage in a concert gown, singing with my eyes closed, glowing with happiness. There I was with my friends after a rehearsal, laughing. There I was with Greg at the beginning of our relationship, young, beautiful, in love. Who was that girl? Where did she go? "What are you staring at the album for?" Greg asked, coming into the kitchen for a glass of water. Reminiscing about the past. "Just looking," I answered quietly. "You were at least pretty back then. Now you're just a frump." He said it casually as a statement of fact and went back to the living room. I sat there, holding the album, and felt something inside me finally break. A week before the holidays, Greg announced that his company was having a corporate party. It's an important event. Partners, investors are invited. The CEO asked everyone to bring their families to show we're a solid team. "So I'm going too?" I asked, surprised. He usually went to these things alone. Greg gave me a once-over and grimaced. "Looking like that, Anna, look at yourself. Don't even think about it. I'd be embarrassed to be seen with a frump like you. I'll tell the boss you're sick." "A frump." He called me a frump. Not as a joke, not in the heat of an argument, but calmly, matter-of-factly, as if just calling a thing by its name. I said nothing. I just nodded and turned away so he wouldn't see my eyes. But when Greg left, I opened the album again, looked at that girl in the concert gown, and for the first time in years, I felt not sorrow but rage. No. Enough. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I had no clear plan, but something inside some forgotten remnant of pride suddenly woke up and whispered, "You are not a frump. You've just forgotten who you are." The next day, I started to act. Secretly. I had no money, but I had a pair of old gold earrings my late grandmother had given me. I took them to a pawn shop and got $500. It would have to be enough. I booked an appointment at a beauty salon for the evening of the 31st. Hairstylist, makeup artist, manicure, the full package. The receptionist looked at me doubtfully when I gave her the date. "The evening of the 31st, ma'am, you realize that's our busiest day? Everyone wants to look good for the holiday." "I understand, but I need it to be in the evening. I'll pay whatever you ask." She quoted me a price $350 for everything. I agreed without haggling. I spent the remaining $150 on a dress. I found a dark evening gown in a high-end consignment shop nearly new. Someone had bought it, worn it once, and sold it. It was my size. It fit perfectly form-fitting but not provocative, modest but elegant. Sharon agreed to watch Leo on New Year's Eve, though she grumbled. "What's the point of you going, Greg? Said it's for important people. You'll stick out like a sore thumb. But fine, I'll watch my grandson if I have to." I didn't explain anything, just nodded. On the evening of the 31st, I went to the salon. The hairstylist was a young woman with bright lipstick and a tired look. "What are we doing today?" she asked, examining my lifeless hair. "I want to look different. Beautiful." She smiled. "A good request. Let's see what we can do." For 3 hours, I sat in that chair. The stylist washed, cut, styled, and curled. The makeup artist worked on my face, patiently concealing the dark circles, highlighting my eyes and lips. The manicurist fixed my bitten nails. When it was all over and they handed me a mirror, I didn't immediately recognize the woman staring back. My hair was styled in soft waves, my face was fresh, my eyes large and expressive, my lips a vibrant red. I looked alive, beautiful. Not like a janitor worn down by life, but like a woman. "It suits you," the stylist said. "You look completely transformed." I changed at the salon, putting on the dress and a pair of low heels, and looked at myself in the full-length mirror. My heart was pounding. I was terrified of going to the party, of seeing Greg's reaction, of hearing what he'd say. But I was even more terrified of staying home and continuing to live as I had before. A taxi dropped me off at the hotel around 9:30. I was 2 hours late. The salon had run behind, but I got out of the car and walked towards the entrance. My legs felt weak, my hands were trembling, but I kept walking. A doorman opened the door for me. I entered the lobby, checked my coat, and walked towards the ballroom. Music, laughter, a hum of voices. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside, and I heard my husband's voice booming across the hall. "Who wants to spend a night with my frump and listen to her squawk? The starting bid is $5. Come on, don't be shy. It's a charity auction." The room was laughing. Someone shouted $10, someone else cheered on their drunk colleague. And I stood in the doorway as the world around me seemed to stop. He didn't know I was there. He thought I was at home in my old robe clearing the dinner table. He was auctioning me off in front of all his colleagues, partners, and important people. $5 for me, for my life, for the right to spend a night with the woman he called a frump. The blood drained from my face. I stood there, unable to move. Slowly, the room began to notice me. Heads started to turn. The music softened. "Well, look what we have here," someone said loudly. "A beautiful woman has arrived." Greg turned around. His drunken gaze slid over me, not recognizing me at first. He squinted, trying to focus. "Now, if only a beauty like that would show up instead of my hag," he slurred and let out a cackle. A few people standing closer recognized me. A whisper started to spread. "Isn't that the janitor, Anna, Greg's wife?" "No way." "Greg, that's your wife." He froze. His eyes slowly traveled from my shoes up to my face. His expression shifted from drunken amusement to confusion, then to shock. "Anna," he stammered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were stuck in my throat along with the tears. "What you decided to play dress-up," Greg tried to smile, but it came out as a crooked grimace. "Well, whatever the lot still stands. $5 for a night with the wife. Who'll bid more?" He was continuing his drunken joke. Even after seeing me, even after realizing I'd heard everything, he didn't stop. To him it was just fun, just entertainment for a drunk crowd. I stood there and felt something dark and cold rise within me. Not tears, not self-pity, fury. $100,000. The voice came from the back of the room. It was low, calm, and confident. Everyone turned at once. A man was rising from a VIP table, tall in his 40s in an impeccable suit. I'd never seen him before. He walked through the room and the crowd parted for him. $100,000, he repeated, approaching me for the privilege of spending the evening with this lady. The silence was absolute. Even the music had stopped. Everyone looked from the stranger to me, then to Greg. The CEO of Greg's company standing near my husband turned pale. "Mr. Thorne, are you serious?" Completely, the man replied. "I'll transfer it to your company's charity fund tomorrow." Assuming, of course, the lady agrees. He walked right up to me and extended his hand. "Allow me to introduce myself. Marcus Thorne. It would be my honor to rescue you from this circus." I looked at him, not understanding what was happening. $100, 000. For me, the janitor, the frump, the woman who had just been auctioned off for $5. "I heard your husband mention that you sing," Marcus continued. "Allow me to guess that you do it beautifully since he's so afraid to admit it. Would you like to spend the evening away from this noise, away from the drunken clowns?" His voice was gentle, but there was steel in it. He looked me in the eyes, and in his gaze there was no lust or mockery, only respect. I took his hand. It was warm and strong. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, I would." Marcus turned, holding my elbow, and led me toward the exit. The ballroom was silent. Greg stood with his mouth open, still not processing what was happening. "Anna," he finally yelled. "Stop! Where are you going? It was a joke." I didn't look back. We walked through the entire hall. At the exit, Marcus retrieved my coat from a stunned coat check attendant and helped me put it on. A black car with a driver was waiting at the entrance. "Where would you like to go?" Marcus asked, opening the door. "I don't know," I admitted. "Anywhere but home. I know a place. Trust me." I nodded and got into the car. The last thing I saw looking back was Greg's face in the restaurant window, drunk, confused, and angry. The car pulled away. We drove through the city night. The lights of holiday garlands decorated shop windows and Christmas trees flashed by. I was sitting in the back of a luxury car next to a stranger who had just paid $100, 000, for the right to spend the evening with me. It all felt surreal. "Are you cold?" Marcus asked. "I can turn up the heat." "No, thank you, I'm fine." I wrapped my arms around myself. I was shivering not from the cold but from what had just happened. The humiliation, the auction, the $100,000, the escape from the restaurant, it all swirled in my head like a wild kaleidoscope. "Forgive my directness, but you look like you either need to talk or you need to sit in silence." "Which would you prefer?" Marcus said. I looked at him. In the passing streetlights, I could see his face calm with strong features and faint lines around his eyes. He wasn't looking at me with lust or curiosity, but with something like empathy. "I don't understand why you did that," I managed to say. "You don't know me. Why pay $100, 000, for the chance to pull a human being out of a humiliating situation?" He finished for me. "I didn't pay for you like an object. I paid to stop that shameful spectacle, to show your husband and everyone else that the woman they were tormenting is worth more than they can possibly imagine. And for me, $100, 000 is not a problem. I have money. But you tonight, you didn't have a choice. Until I showed up." The car turned off a central avenue and headed towards a park. I recognized it, an old historic city park that was usually closed in the winter. But now its gates were open and thousands of lights glowed within. "I rented the park for my company's event tonight," Marcus explained. "But I canceled at the last minute. I decided I didn't want to spend New Year's in a crowd. Now I'm glad I did. It gives me a chance to show you something beautiful." We got out of the car. The cold air hit my face, but I barely felt it. Before my eyes was a fairy tale. Every tree in the park was wrapped in string lights. Thousands of tiny bulbs twinkled in the darkness, creating the feeling of a starry sky that had descended to Earth. The paths were clear-lined with old-fashioned lamps. Snow was falling in large, soft flakes. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Yes." My wife loved this place. We met here many years ago. She sang in a choir that performed on the open-air stage in the summer. I came to listen and fell in love at first sight. A note of pain entered his voice. I looked at him. Loved, you're divorced. She died 3 years ago. A car accident. It was instant. She never even knew what happened. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Since then, I haven't been able to bring myself to celebrate New Year's properly. It was her favorite holiday. She always turned it into something magical, decorating the house, baking, singing. After she was gone, it all just felt empty. We walked along an alley, the snow crunching under our feet. The only sound was the distant hum of the city. Why did you go to that party? I asked. If you don't like those events. The CEO of that company asked me to make an appearance. We're in negotiations for a joint venture. I went out of politeness, planned to stay for half an hour and leave. But then I heard your husband start his auction, and I couldn't leave. I became curious about the woman he was humiliating so publicly. And when you walked into the room, he stopped and turned to me. When you walked in, I saw more than just a beautiful woman. I saw someone who had gathered all her strength to prove something to herself. It was written all over your face: fear, determination, hope. And when you heard his words and didn't turn and run but kept standing there, I knew you were incredibly strong. Strong, I scoffed. I endured his humiliation for 8 years. I let him turn me into a janitor. I lost my dream, my talent, myself. How is that strong? You came to that party. You transformed yourself. You took a chance. That is strength. Many people break completely and stay in their swamp forever. But you tried to climb out. And you did when I offered you my hand. We reached a bench under an old oak tree. Marcus brushed the snow off with his handkerchief and gestured for me to sit. I sat on the cold wood and he sat beside me. Tell me about yourself, he requested. Who were you before you became that man's wife? And I told him everything. About the conservatory, the dream of the stage, the voice that professors said could fill grand halls. About the pregnancy, the pressure from his mother abandoning my studies. About the years of humiliation, the ban on singing the janitor job, about how I slowly lost myself turning into a gray shadow. Marcus listened in silence, never interrupting, just nodding occasionally. When I finished, he stared into the distance for a long time at the twinkling lights. My wife sang too, he said quietly. She didn't have professional training, just an amateur choir. But it was her joy. She looked forward to every rehearsal like a holiday, and I loved listening to her sing at home while she was cooking or cleaning. It filled the house with life. After she died, the house became silent. I couldn't stand it. He turned to me. Right before she died, when we were in the car, she didn't know those were her last minutes. We were just talking and she said, "You know what I want? When we've made enough, I want to open a vocal school for people who have talent but no money for lessons. So people don't lose their gift because of circumstances." 5 minutes later, a truck ran a red light and hit us. She was gone, and I was left with that request like a last will and testament. He fell silent, swallowing hard. I tried. I really tried to fulfill her wish, but I couldn't find the strength. I would meet with aspiring singers, and all I could see in them was what I had lost. It was too painful. So I threw myself into my work, opening new hotels, expanding the business, making more and more money but feeling empty inside. And what changed tonight? I asked softly. You. Your story. When I heard your husband mocking you for singing, I remembered my wife's words. People don't lose their gift because of circumstances. And I realized that if I didn't help at least one person, I would be betraying her memory for good. He took a handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to me. I didn't realize why until I felt the tears on my own cheeks. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, wiping my eyes. "I didn't mean to. Cry. It's okay. You've been through a nightmare. You need to let it out." We sat in silence. The snow continued to fall. In the distance, church bells began to ring. Midnight. The new year. "Sing for me," Marcus asked. "Please. Not for your husband, not for an auction. For yourself. For the talent that's still inside you. Show me it's not dead." "I haven't sung in 7 years," I whispered. "I don't even know if I have a voice left." "Try." I stood up. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would leap out of my chest. I closed my eyes and remembered the aria from Tosca by Puccini, the one I had once sung for an exam at the conservatory. I took a deep breath and began. The first few notes were hesitant, shaky. My voice sounded foreign after so many years of silence. But then something clicked inside. My vocal cords remembered. The sound became clearer, stronger. I sang in the empty park under the falling snow and twinkling lights, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. When the aria ended, I opened my eyes. Marcus was sitting on the bench looking at me. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. "That was He choked up, wiping his eyes. That was incredible. Anna, you have a breathtaking voice. A true gift. Your husband is a blind fool if he can't hear that. He said I was wailing. He's a liar. What you just did, that was art. Pure, real art. Voices like that are one in a million. He stood up and walked over to me. I have a proposal for you. It's both professional and personal. I waited silent. I own a chain of boutique hotels. I recently opened a new flagship hotel downtown. I plan to open a music lounge there, an intimate venue for select artists. Live music, classical jazz for discerning guests who appreciate real art. I need a resident artist. Someone with talent, with soul, with a story. You would be perfect. I don't understand. You're offering me a job. More than a job. I'm offering you a chance to get your life back. A place to live, a guest cottage on the hotel grounds. A generous salary that will let you stop worrying about money. Lessons with the best vocal coaches I can find. Performances in front of an audience that will appreciate your talent. Freedom. And most importantly, the chance to be yourself again. My head was spinning. It was too good to be true. But why? Why are you doing this for a complete stranger? Because my wife asked me to help those who want to sing. Because I hear in your voice what I've been searching for 3 years, life, hope, beauty. And because, to be honest, he paused, choosing his words, I hope that there might be something more between us. Not now. I'm not demanding anything in return. But later, when you feel free, when you've sorted out your life, I would like to get to know you better. If you'll let me. I looked at him and saw sincerity. Not lust, not calculation. Just hope. I have a son, I said. Leo is 5. I can't leave him. I wouldn't ask you to. The cottage has a separate children's room. There's an excellent private daycare right next to the hotel. Everything will be taken care of. I don't separate mothers from their children. I grew up without a mother myself. I know how painful that is. But my husband, the divorce, it's all so complicated. I have excellent lawyers. They'll help you. They'll handle everything quickly and correctly. You won't even have to see him more than necessary. It felt like a dream, a fairy tale. A rich man appears out of nowhere and offers to solve all my problems. Things like that don't happen in real life. But as I stood in the snowy, glittering park next to the man who had just cried listening to my voice, I realized it was real. I need time to think, I managed to say. One day. I need to think it all through. Of course. Take as much time as you need. Here's my card. Call me anytime. He handed me a business card. I took it with trembling fingers. I'll take you home, Marcus said. No, it came out too sharply. I mean, just drop me off a couple of blocks away. I don't want to have to explain. I understand. We returned to the car. We were silent on the way back. I stared out the window, thinking about his offer, about my escape, about a new life, about the fact that if I refused, I would remain in that apartment with that husband and that job as a janitor. Forever. The car stopped 2 blocks from my building. Thank you, I said as I got out. For everything. For saving me, for the park, for the offer. Don't thank me. Just think about it. And remember, you deserve better. I nodded and walked down the snowy street toward my home. The lights were on in the windows. Greg was already back. I unlocked the door and went inside. The apartment reeked of alcohol and vomit. Greg was lying on the couch snoring. His suit was wrinkled and stained. He hadn't even bothered to get undressed. He'd just collapsed and passed out. I went to the bathroom, washed off my makeup, took off the dress, and looked at myself in the mirror. The dark circles were back, so was the exhaustion. But there was a spark in my eyes that hadn't been there for a long time. I was woken up the next morning by Greg yelling from the living room. Anna, where are you? Get me some Gatorade and Advil. I got up, pulled on my robe, and went to the kitchen. He was sitting at the table holding his head. His face was gray, his eyes were red. My head is splitting, he moaned. What happened last night? Why can't I remember anything? You seriously don't remember? I asked calmly. No. Must have had too much to drink. Where's the Gatorade? I opened the fridge, got the bottle, and poured him a glass. You put me up for auction, I said, placing the glass in front of him. For $5. You said I was a frump and that I squawk when I sing. Greg chugged the Gatorade and waved his hand dismissively. Oh, come on. It was probably a joke. You weren't even there. What are you so upset about? I was there. He looked up at me. What? I was there. I was at the party. I heard every word you said. His face changed. He tensed up, trying to remember. You were, Look, okay, I'm sorry. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. And anyway, where were you all night? I looked at him and realized that even if he did remember, it wouldn't change a thing. To him, it was just a joke. Normal behavior. He saw nothing wrong with it. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Sharon on the doorstep holding Leo's hand. Mommy, my son ran into my arms. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of his hair. Well, had your fun? My mother-in-law asked snidely as she walked in. I told you there was no reason for you to go. You probably made a fool of yourself. Greg, sweetie, how are you? Your head must be hurting. Mommy will get you some water. I already got him something, I said quietly. Oh, right. Well, at least you're good for something. I stood there with my son in my arms looking at the scene. My mother-in-law fussing over her grown son, he moaning from a hangover and demanding attention. Both of them looking at me like I was the hired help. And it would always be like this. In a year, in 5 years, in 20. Leo would grow up thinking, this is how you treat women. He would become just like his father if I stayed. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and took out Marcus's business card. I dialed the number with trembling fingers. Hello, he answered on the second ring. It's Anna. I accept. Are you sure? Yes. But I need help. With the divorce with moving. I don't know how to do any of it. My lawyer will contact you in an hour. When can you be ready to leave? Tomorrow. I need to pack my things quietly while my husband is at work. Okay. I'll be waiting for you tomorrow. Everything is going to be all right, Anna. I hung up and looked at my reflection in the mirror. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. But I had to do this. For myself, for Leo, and for the girl who once dreamed of singing on a grand stage. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Sharon left in the evening. Greg lay on the couch watching TV and moaning periodically. I cooked dinner, cleaned up, and put Leo to bed. A normal day, a normal life. But inside, everything had changed. On January 2nd, Greg went to work saying he was meeting up with colleagues to continue celebrating. I waited for him to leave, then started packing. I didn't have much. My clothes fit into one suitcase. Leo's toys and clothes went into a duffel bag. I took only the essentials, my and my son's documents, our marriage certificate, Leo's birth certificate, our medical records. Mommy, are we going somewhere? Leo asked, watching me pack. Yes, sweetie. We're moving to a new place. What about Daddy? I knelt down beside him and took his little hands in mine. Daddy is going to stay here. We'll come visit him, but we're going to live separately. You're going to have your own big room. But why aren't we going to live with Daddy? Because Mommy and Daddy can't live together anymore. But we both love you very much. That will never change. We'll just live in different places. Leo thought for a moment, frowning. Will there be room for my cars there? Yes, there will. A whole room for your cars. Okay then. Children are amazing. They accept change more easily than adults. As long as Mom and their favorite toys are there. I left a note for Greg on the table. Short, emotionless. I'm leaving. I'm filing for divorce. Don't look for me. Anna. We walked out of the apartment. I closed the door and dropped the key in the mailbox. That was it. No turning back. A taxi took us to Marcus's hotel. A huge, modern building in the heart of the city. A concierge met us at the entrance. Miss Anna, Mr. Thorne is expecting you. This way, please. We were led through a luxurious lobby to an elevator and taken to the top floor. Marcus was waiting in the hallway. Anna, I'm so glad you decided to come. And this must be Leo. He knelt down in front of my son. Hello, young man. My name is Marcus. Hi, Leo answered shyly. I have a surprise for you. Want to see your new room? Leo looked at me. I nodded. Marcus took his hand and led him down the hall. I followed with our bags. The cottage was in a separate wing of the hotel, a 2-story suite spacious with panoramic windows. Marcus opened the door and we stepped inside. It was bright, cozy, and smelled fresh. Modern furniture, hardwood floors, a soft rug. On the first floor was a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. On the second, 3 bedrooms. This is your room, Marcus said, opening a door. A large bed, a wardrobe, a desk, a window with a city view. And this is Leo's room. The kids' room was decorated in soft colors. A bed shaped like a race car, shelves full of toys, a drawing table, a rug with roads for his cars. Wow, Leo ran straight for the toys. Mommy, look. I see, sweetie. Marcus smiled. I hope he likes it. Get settled, rest up. My lawyer will come see you tomorrow morning. He'll explain the divorce process and what documents you'll need. Thank you, I whispered. For everything. You're welcome. You deserve this. He left, leaving us alone. I sat on the edge of the bed in my new room and cried. From relief, from fear, from gratitude, and from the feeling that for the first time in years I was safe. Leo ran in from his room and hugged me. Don't cry, Mommy. Don't you like our new house? I do, sweetie. I love it. I'm just happy. The next day, the lawyer arrived. A middle-aged man in a sharp suit with a briefcase full of documents. Hello, Anna. My name is Victor. Mr. Thorne asked me to assist you with your divorce. Please tell me about your situation. I told him everything. The marriage, Greg, the humiliation, the corporate party. Are there witnesses to what happened at the party? Victor asked. Many. The whole room heard it. Good. I'll try to get some statements. We should also document the living conditions you were in. Were there any instances of physical abuse? No, only psychological. Understood. With the child, it will be straightforward. He's young. The court almost always sides with the mother at this age. The father will be ordered to pay child support and granted visitation. We'll file for divorce on your behalf. The process should take about 2 months. A few days later, Greg was served with the court papers. He immediately started calling me. I didn't answer. Then he started texting. Have you lost your mind? Where are you going to go? You're nobody without me. You don't even have any money. Where are you? Where is my son, Anna? Answer me right now. I blocked his number. Sharon started attacking me too. She called, left venomous voicemails. You've gone crazy. You abandoned your husband, stole my grandson. Where did you go? Greg is going to call the police. They'll find you. You think you've escaped. You won't get far. You'll come back on your knees. But Marcus's lawyer had already handled everything with the police. There were no violations. A mother has the right to live with her child wherever she chooses. The divorce papers had been officially filed. Greg and his mother assumed I had rented some cheap apartment on the outskirts, was working 2 jobs and barely getting by. That thought comforted them. They believed I would soon come back broken and repentant, but I was starting a new life. I woke up at 8 a.m. Every day had breakfast with Leo and walked him to the private daycare next to the hotel. Then I would come back and have a voice lesson with the coach Marcus had found for me. Her name was Elizabeth, a woman in her 60s who taught at the top conservatory and prepared soloists for opera houses. An interesting timbre, she said after my first audition. Good lung capacity, proper projection. But your technique is rusty, and the chords are weak. We have work to do. We worked for 4 hours every day. Warm-ups, breathing exercises, technique drills, learning new pieces. Elizabeth was strict but fair. She praised me when I did well and was ruthless in pointing out my mistakes. Again, deeper breath. Sustain the note. Don't tighten your throat. Relax. There, that's it. Hear the difference. Slowly, my voice came back. It grew stronger, clearer, more confident. I felt like a singer again. In the evenings, I would meet with Marcus. We had dinner together, went for walks, and talked. He told me about his business, about his late wife, about how hard it was after she died. I told him about my past, my fears, my hopes. After a month, he kissed me. We were standing on the cottage's terrace looking at the city lights, and he suddenly took my hand. Anna, I know it's too soon, but I can't keep this to myself. You've become important to me. Very important. I've fallen in love with you. Not just your voice, but you, your strength, your kindness, the way you care for Leo, how hard you work. I want to be with you. I looked at him and felt the same way. Over that month, he had become close to me. I trusted him. I felt protected with him. And yes, I had fallen in love too. I want to be with you too, I whispered. He leaned in and kissed me gently, tenderly, as if afraid to scare me away. The court date was set for early March. I prepared for my meeting with Greg as if it were an exam. Marcus insisted I buy a good suit, tailored, professional, expensive. Elizabeth let me out of my lesson early, wishing me luck. Keep your back straight, she advised. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You are in the right. I arrived at the courthouse half an hour early. Victor was already waiting in the hallway. Ready, he asked. As I'll ever be. We have a strong case. I got statements from several witnesses at the party. I also have a video from another guest's phone. You can hear everything your husband said. We entered the courtroom. Greg was already sitting on his side with some young lawyer. He turned when I walked in, and I saw his face change. Shock, disbelief, anger. I looked nothing like he expected. Not a broken single mother in cheap clothes. I was in an expensive suit with a professional hairstyle and a calm expression. I looked successful and confident. "Anna," he started. "Where did you get—" The judge entered and everyone stood. The hearing began. Greg's lawyer tried to portray me as an ungrateful wife who had abandoned her family for a better life. He said I had taken the child without the father's consent, that I was denying him his parental rights. Victor calmly countered every argument. He presented evidence of psychological abuse, showed the witness statements about Greg's behavior at the party, and finally played the recording. Greg's voice filled the courtroom. "Who wants to spend a night with my frump and listen to her squawk? The starting bid is $5. Laughter. Cheers from drunk colleagues. Come on, for $5 you get a woman who wails like a siren." The judge frowned. Greg turned pale. "I was drunk," he muttered. "It was a joke." "A joke," the judge repeated. "Publicly humiliating your wife is what you call a joke." "I wasn't thinking." "Precisely. You weren't thinking." The judge reviewed the documents and listened to the testimony. She delivered her decision quickly. The marriage was dissolved. The child would remain with the mother. The father was ordered to pay child support a quarter of his income. Visitation with the child twice a month on weekends to be arranged with the mother. Greg tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "You will have the opportunity to appeal if you find this ruling unjust. This hearing is adjourned." We left the courtroom. Greg caught up with me in the hallway. "Anna, wait. We need to talk." I stopped and turned. Victor stood beside me, ready to intervene. "About what?" I asked calmly. "About us. About our family. I was a fool, I know that. But we can fix this. Come back. I'll change." "No." "What do you mean no? We have a son. We're a family." "We were a family. Not anymore. You killed it with your own hands over years." "It wasn't just one drunken stunt, Anna." I apologized. "You didn't apologize. You said it was a joke. And this isn't about one stunt. It's the culmination of 8 years of humiliation, insults, and neglect. I tolerated it for as long as I could. I can't anymore. And I don't want to. You found someone else, didn't you?" A flash of anger in his eyes. "That creep from the party. You think he's going to marry you. That's none of your business." "The hell it isn't. You're the mother of my son. And that's exactly why I took him away from you. I don't want him to grow up to be like you. To think it's okay to treat women that way." I turned and walked toward the exit. Greg shouted after me, "You'll regret this. He'll dump you, and you'll come crawling back, but I won't take you." I didn't look back. I walked out of the courthouse where Marcus was waiting in his car. He opened the door, I got in, and we drove away. "How did it go?" he asked. "The divorce is final. Leo stays with me." "Congratulations. You're free." I looked at him and smiled. For the first time in years, a genuine, wide, happy smile. "Yes, I'm free." A week after the divorce, Marcus proposed. We were having dinner at one of his hotels in a rooftop restaurant overlooking the entire city. He got up from the table, knelt on one knee, and pulled out a small box with a ring. "Anna, I know we've only known each other for 2 months, but I am absolutely sure of my feelings. You brought me back to life, you gave me hope, you've become my family. Will you marry me?" I looked at him through tears and nodded. "Yes. Yes, I'll marry you." The ring was elegant with a single, perfect diamond. Marcus slipped it onto my finger and kissed me to the applause of the other diners. We had a quiet wedding a month later. Just our closest friends, a few of Marcus's Elizabeth Victor. And Leo, of course, who was thrilled with his little tuxedo and proudly carried the rings. After the ceremony, Marcus officially adopted Leo. My son got a new last name, Thorne, and a new father who read to him every night, played with him, and taught him how to ride a bike. A real father. Greg tried to use his visitation rights once. He showed up drunk an hour late with a cheap plastic toy. Leo looked at him with confusion. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm your daddy," Greg said. "No, you're not. My daddy is Marcus." After that, Greg never showed up again. He paid child support sporadically, but Marcus said it didn't matter. We had enough. And I continued my vocal training. Every day, relentlessly, passionately. My voice grew stronger and stronger. Elizabeth was pleased. "In 6 months, you'll be ready for your first serious performance," she said. And so June arrived 6 months after I had escaped my old life. Marcus organized my debut performance at the Music Lounge in his hotel. An intimate concert for 50 people. I was incredibly nervous rehearsing until my legs shook, but when I stepped onto the stage and saw Marcus in the front row with a bouquet of roses, all my anxiety vanished. I sang arias from operas, romantic art songs, old ballads. My voice was clear, powerful, confident. The audience listened in rapt attention. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood up shouting, "Bravo!" Flowers were thrown onto the stage. Marcus stood and clapped the loudest, tears on his face. After the concert, people came up to me, introduced themselves, asked for autographs, asked where I had studied and when my next concert would be. I answered, smiled, still, not believing this was happening to me. "You were magnificent," one of the guests, an older gentleman in an expensive suit, said. "I own a concert agency. Here's my card. I'd love to discuss the possibility of you performing at larger venues." I took the card with trembling fingers. Marcus put his arm around my shoulders. "I told you. You have a real talent. Now the whole city will know." The next few months flew by in a blur. Performances in different halls, working with my coach, recording a demo album. My name started appearing on posters and in cultural reviews. Anna Thorne, a new star of classical music. The discovery of the season. A voice that must be heard. Marcus was incredibly proud of me. He came to every concert, sat in the front row, and clapped the loudest. But at home, we were just a normal family. We had dinner together with Leo, watched cartoons, and played board games. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy for the first time in my life. Then Marcus announced the big one. "I've rented the Metropolitan Grand Hall," he said one evening. 1,500 seats. I want to organize your solo concert. An evening of classical voice, Anna Thorne. What do you say? 1,500 seats. I went pale. "Marcus, that's too much. I'm not ready for that scale." "You are ready. Trust me. Elizabeth says you're ready. I think so too. It's time for you to step onto the big stage." "What if the tickets don't sell?" "They'll sell. You already have an audience and I'll invest in advertising." And he did. All over the city, posters appeared with my photograph, in a concert gown, with a beautiful hairstyle with a proud posture. Anna Thorne. A special project of the Thorne Hotel's music lounges. The concert date was set for late December, right before the new year. The tickets sold out in 2 weeks. Completely. Even the most expensive box seats. I rehearsed like a woman possessed. Elizabeth and I put together the program, the best arias, the most challenging pieces. I had to show everything I was capable of. A week before the concert, I woke up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. "I'm scared," I confessed to Marcus at breakfast. "What if I forget the words? What if my voice fails?" "It won't. You're a professional. You've done an incredible amount of work. It will be perfect." But the fear wouldn't leave. I knew this would be the most important concert of my life, that my future career depended on it, that people had paid a lot of money and were expecting a miracle. And I had to create that miracle. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Greg was walking down the street with his mother and stopped dead in his tracks. On a bus shelter was a huge poster. My face 10 times its natural size. A luxurious gown. The name Anna Thorne. An evening of classical voice. "Thorne," he asked. "She got married." Sharon stepped closer, squinting. "No, that's not her. Just looks like her." "Mom, it's Anna. Look, the mole above her lip. The shape of her nose. It's definitely her." "It can't be. She's a janitor. Where would she get the money for something like this?" Greg pulled out his phone and started searching. He found the articles. A new name in classical music. Anna Thorne delights audiences at intimate concerts. The wife of hotel magnate Marcus Thorne makes her grand stage debut. There were photos. Me and Marcus at a charity gala, his hand on my waist, me glowing with happiness. "Thorne," Greg whispered. "The guy from the party. The millionaire." "She's been with him this whole time," Sharon exclaimed. "She hooked a rich one. That's why she left." Greg kept scrolling, reading reviews of my performances. A voice of rare beauty and power. Anna Thorne is a true find for lovers of classical music. Her technique is flawless, her emotion profound. She can really sing, he muttered. All this time I thought she was just wailing. "What does it matter?" his mother snapped. "The point is, she left you. Stole my grandson, the shameless hussy." But Greg wasn't listening anymore. He was staring at the poster, at the woman he once loved, the woman he had destroyed, and the woman who had been resurrected without him. "I want to go to that concert," he said. "Are you crazy? I have to see it. I have to hear it." He went to a ticket-selling website. Everything was sold out. The only ones left were from scalpers at inflated prices. The cheapest seats in the balcony were $200 each. He didn't have that kind of money. His salary went to rent, food, and alcohol. He borrowed money from a colleague and bought 2 tickets for himself and his mother. Why do I have to go? Sharon protested. You're going. I want you to see what we lost. The day of the concert arrived. I woke up early even though the performance wasn't until evening. I couldn't lie still. Marcus held me. Nervous. Terrified. That's normal. Even the greatest artists get nervous. But the moment you walk on stage and start to sing, the nerves will go away. There will only be the music. In the afternoon, I had my final rehearsal with the orchestra. The conductor, a world-renowned musician, was pleased. Excellent, Anna. You are ready. I'll see you tonight. I went back to my dressing room. A stylist did my hair, a makeup artist did my face. I put on my concert gown gold, long, shimmering under the lights. I looked at myself in the mirror. That's me. That confident, beautiful woman in a stunning dress. Yes, that was me. The real me. That evening, I arrived at the concert hall through the stage entrance. Marcus and Leo came through the main doors. They were sitting in the front row. I stood in the wings, hearing the hall fill up. The murmur of voices, laughter, the rustle of programs. 1,500 people had come to hear me sing. 5 minutes, the stage manager warned. I closed my eyes, did my breathing exercises, and remembered Elizabeth's words. You are ready. Just walk out there and sing. The rest will follow. The house lights dimmed. The orchestra began to play. The curtains started to rise. I walked onto the stage. The glare of the spotlights blinded me for a moment, but then my eyes adjusted and I saw the hall, huge, packed, and silent with anticipation. In the front row sat Marcus. Next to him was Leo, my little boy, in a smart suit, waving and smiling at me. I smiled back, turned to the conductor, and nodded. The orchestra played the introduction and I began to sing. The first aria was from Tosca, the very one I had sung for Marcus a year ago in the snowy park. The voice poured out of me, clear, powerful, free. I wasn't thinking about technique or breath or lyrics. I was just singing. The hall listened, holding its breath. And when I held the final note and then fell silent, there was a second of stillness and then an explosion of applause. People were on their feet shouting bravo, giving me a standing ovation. I bowed, straightened my shoulders, and prepared for the next aria. The concert lasted 2 hours. I sang one piece after another, giving my entire self to the music. Somewhere in the balcony in the last row sat Greg. He watched me with wide eyes, not recognizing me. This was his wife, the janitor he had auctioned off for $5. Beside him sat Sharon. She too was silent, pale, her face a frozen mask. They were dressed in their old clothes, looking poor and lost among the wealthy audience in their fine attire. And on the stage, I sang and shone. My dress glittered under the lights. My voice grew stronger, more confident with each song. The audience roared after every aria. During the intermission, a short film was shown on a large screen. It was me and Marcus. Our story, without mentioning my first marriage. The talented singer Anna Thorne, and the philanthropist Marcus Thorne. A story of love and music. Greg watched the screen and choked back tears. He had lost all of this. With his own hands. The second half was even better than the first. I sang the most difficult pieces, ones I had once been afraid to even attempt, and I nailed them, all of them. The final aria was from La Traviata. My favorite, the most challenging. I poured everything into it. The pain of the past, the joy of the present, the hope for the future. The final note soared in absolute silence. I held it, sustained it until I had no breath left, and then released it. The hall erupted. People leaped from their seats, applauding, shouting, crying. Flowers rained down on the stage. The ovation was deafening and endless. Marcus came up on stage with an enormous bouquet of white roses. He hugged me, kissed me in front of everyone, and took the microphone. Thank you for coming tonight to hear the voice of my wife, Anna Thorne. She is not only the love of my life, but a phenomenal talent. This is only the beginning. Her next concert in 2 months will be on the international stage. The hall roared with applause again. I stood on that stage in the spotlight, in my golden dress, in the arms of the man I loved, and I knew I had made it. To my dream. To the real me. After the concert, there was a reception for special guests. I changed into a cocktail dress and joined the party. People came up to me congratulating me, complimenting me, asking for photos. Marcus stood beside me, proud and happy. Leo held my hand, yawning it was late, but he refused to leave until he saw his mom at the party. Outside, behind the barricades set up for fans, stood Greg and Sharon. They couldn't get into the VIP reception. Security wouldn't let them pass. Greg tried to push through. Let me in, I need to talk to Anna. Do you have an invitation, sir? No, but I know her. No entry without an invitation. He stood at the barricade yelling, Anna, Anna. I was leaving the building with Marcus and Leo heading for our limousine when I heard his cry. I turned. They were standing there behind the barricade. Greg in a wrinkled jacket, his eyes red from tears. Sharon pale in her old coat. Our eyes met. I looked at him for a few seconds calmly, without anger, without pain. I just looked at the person who was once a part of my life and now was not. I'm sorry, he yelled. I was a fool, come back. I turned away. Marcus opened the limousine door. I lifted a sleepy Leo into my arms and got in. The car pulled away. The last thing I saw in the side mirror was the silhouette of Greg and his mother under a streetlight. They stood there watching us go. I never looked back again. My life began anew that night when a stranger offered me his hand and said, "Allow me to rescue you from this circus." I took that hand and built a new life, the one I deserved. With a man who loved me, with a son who was proud of me, and with a voice that finally rang out the way it was always meant to. And now, whenever I step onto a stage, Marcus is always in the front row with a bouquet of white roses. And next to him, little Leo, who proudly tells everyone, "That's my mommy singing. She's the best singer in the world." And in a small apartment on the edge of the city, a man sat the man who had once auctioned off a diamond for $5. And now he knew the price of his mistake. It wasn't the $100,000 another man had paid to save what he himself had been destroying for years. The real price was that he had lost the woman who could have loved him for a lifetime if only he had valued her.